Ladies and gentlemen, we have two things to address today that exist on completely opposite ends of the emotional spectrum, and both of them deserve the full and honest examination that this moment and this story have consistently demanded throughout everything we have covered together during this off-season. On one end, we have a young man speaking from the depths of his spirit about something that cuts to the absolute core of what it means to maintain your identity and your purpose in the middle of a storm that most people will never experience and that very few people could navigate with the grace and the groundedness that Shedeur Sanders has consistently demonstrated. On the other end, we have an organization continuing to do the work of building a football team regardless of whatever narrative chaos is swirling around the most visible elements of its roster construction. Both stories matter. Both stories connect to the larger picture. And both deserve to be told completely. Let us start with what Shedeur Sanders posted on Instagram this morning, because it is the kind of statement that deserves to be read in full, absorbed completely, and examined for everything it reveals about the mind and the character of the young man at the center of this entire situation. He wrote, "Think about a person's opinion in the grand scheme of life. It means absolutely nothing. We often give opinions power when we react to them and make them seem valuable. We expect anything different from a modern culture that does not keep God at the forefront of daily actions. Those who move through life with foul intentions will eventually face the consequences of their ways. The people who truly align with you will understand his perspective. In the end, as long as you are walking in your purpose, God should be the only one you seek to please." Read that again. Slowly. Because every sentence in that statement carries weight that extends far beyond the specific circumstances of a quarterback competition or a media controversy or an organizational dysfunction story. This is a young man who has been sitting with everything that has been thrown at him over the past several weeks and emerging from that experience not with bitterness, not with the kind of hardened cynicism that this level of sustained public pressure so often produces in people who are not prepared for it, but with a clarity of spiritual perspective that reflects exactly the kind of foundation that his father built for him and that no organizational noise and no media betrayal and no former teammate disrespect can touch or diminish. He is right about opinions. He is absolutely, profoundly, and practically right. A person's opinion in the grand scheme of life means absolutely nothing. The opinion of a reporter who is receiving information from organizational sources with financial agendas that have nothing to do with honest football evaluation means nothing in the grand scheme of Shedeur Sanders' life and career. The opinion of a former NFL player who visited Colorado and expressed love for Coach Prime before pivoting to suggest Watson should start over his son means nothing in the grand scheme of what Sanders will accomplish in his career. The opinion of any talking head or podcast host or content creator who shifts their coverage in whatever direction the organizational winds and the access relationships of the moment suggest is most professionally advantageous means nothing in the grand scheme of what this young man is building and where he is going. What matters is the purpose. What matters is the work. What matters is walking in alignment with the values and the calling that God and family and genuine preparation have equipped him to fulfill. And by every observable measure available throughout this entire offseason, Shedeur Sanders has been doing exactly that, every single day, while the noise around him has been doing what noise does, which is making itself feel more significant than it actually is until the moment of reckoning arrives and reveals it for the empty son it always was. Now let us acknowledge the genuine tension that exists within the wisdom of his statement, because honest analysis requires sitting with that tension rather than resolving it artificially in one direction or the other. He is right that giving opinions power by reacting to them elevates them beyond what they deserve. He is right that in the grand scheme of life, the negative narratives being constructed around his quarterback competition are ultimately meaningless. He is right that God's perspective is the only one that ultimately matters when you are walking in your purpose. And at the same time, the people who care about what is happening to him, the fans who have invested in his journey, the observers who have been documenting and analyzing the organizational dynamics working against his competitive standing, have a legitimate role to play in not simply allowing dishonest and agenda-driven coverage to go unanswered in the public space. Because silence in the face of a coordinated narrative has costs too. The media figures who shifted their coverage when Jason Lloyd and Tony Grossi faced organized pushback from the fan community adjusted their tone, at least temporarily, because the audience made clear that their coverage was being watched and evaluated and that there were consequences for dishonesty in terms of credibility and relevance. Sanders himself understands this tension. His post acknowledges both the wisdom of not giving opinions power and the reality that he sees everything, that he is paying attention, that the constant stream of negative narratives about a young man who last played football in February and won both of the most recent games he participated in is something that registers. It registers for him. It registers for his family. It registers for everyone who has been following this story honestly and who understands that what is happening to him is not a neutral and fair-minded journalistic examination of a genuine competitive situation but a coordinated narrative construction driven by organizational dynamics and financial interests that have nothing to do with determining who gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win football games. That last point cannot be overstated in the context of the conversation about what these negative headlines are actually designed to accomplish. The narrative attack on Shedeur Sanders is not designed to produce better football analysis or more accurate organizational reporting. It is designed to provoke a reaction. Specifically, it is designed to provoke the kind of reaction that can then be used to redefine who Sanders is in the public consciousness. They are waiting, as has been stated plainly, for the headline that rewrites the story. They want the moment where Sanders curses out a reporter. They want the confrontation that can be framed as a character issue. They want the reaction that transforms the narrative from a story about a talented young quarterback being treated unfairly by an organizationally dysfunctional franchise into a story about a young man who cannot handle the pressure and whose behavior confirms every concern that the people driving the negative coverage have been trying to make stick. Sanders refuses to give them that. And his refusal is not weakness or passivity. It is the kind of disciplined competitive intelligence that reflects a player who understands the game being played around him and who has made the conscious decision to play a different game, one where the evaluation happens on the football field in the preseason and the regular season and where the only scorecard that ultimately matters is the one that shows up on the official box score when the games are played. Walk in your purpose. Keep God at the forefront. Let those with foul intentions face the consequences of their ways. Trust that the people who truly align with you will understand. This is the philosophy of a young man who has been raised with both the spiritual depth to sustain himself through adversity and the competitive clarity to understand that the work is the answer to everything the noise is trying to say about him. Now let us turn to the Cleveland Browns organizational news that also came out today, because it matters and it reflects the same ongoing reality about what this front office is actually doing regardless of whatever narrative is dominating the public conversation around the quarterback competition. The Cleveland Browns have signed 12 undrafted free agents. The group consists of 7 defensive players, 4 offensive players, and 1 specialist. Rookie minicamp is running from Friday through Sunday, which means the work of building this roster is happening in real time with real organizational energy and real commitment to finding talent at every level of the draft and free agency process rather than simply managing public perception through press conference language and strategic content releases. Let us look at who they brought in, because the specifics matter. Devin Booth, a running back standing 5 feet 8 inches and 192 pounds, 24 years old out of Mississippi State. Nate Evans, a quarterback standing 5 feet 11 inches and 191 pounds out of Delaware. And then there is a name that stands out immediately for a reason that connects directly to the first-round draft selection that has been central to this entire conversation. Logan Fano, an offensive lineman standing 6 feet 4 inches and 252 pounds, 23 years old out of Utah. The same school where Spencer Fano, the number 9 overall pick and the left tackle selected to protect Shedeur Sanders' blindside, played his college football. The question of whether Logan Fano is related to Spencer Fano is one that immediately surfaces when you see that name on the undrafted free agent list, and if there is a family connection there, the organizational symmetry of bringing in a potential developmental lineman from the same program where their first-round offensive tackle played would be worth examining in terms of what it says about the coaching staff's familiarity with and confidence in Utah's offensive line development program. On the offensive side of the additional signings, T.J. Harden, a running back standing 6 feet tall and 218 pounds, 22 years old out of SMU, brings additional depth to a backfield that serves the running game component of the offensive system Monken is installing. Cole Wilson, a wide receiver standing 5 feet 7 inches and 177 pounds, 22 years old out of Baylor, adds to a receiver room that has already been significantly upgraded through the draft and free agency but that benefits from additional developmental depth at every possible opportunity. The defensive additions, 7 players in total, reflect an understanding that rebuilding a complete roster requires investment on both sides of the ball and that undrafted free agency represents a legitimate and frequently productive avenue for finding players who can develop within a system and contribute in ways that their draft status did not predict. Andrew Berry is still working. That is the most important organizational takeaway from today's roster news. While the public conversation has been consumed by quarterback controversy and media narrative battles and ownership-level interference with the coaching staff's vision, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns has continued executing the roster construction plan with the same discipline and the same thoroughness that produced the draft class that earned Rich Eisen a special segment and generated the kind of national media attention that reflects genuine organizational competence. But here is the uncomfortable question that the undrafted free agent news raises in the context of everything that has been happening throughout this offseason. Andrew Berry has been doing all of this work, assembling all of these pieces, building all of this offensive and defensive infrastructure, through a draft class and a free agency period and now an undrafted free agent signing period. And the person all of that work was supposed to be built around is still fighting a public narrative battle for the right to be recognized as the franchise quarterback that his first team minicamp reps and his coaching staff's evaluative investment and his general manager's public statement about his expected command of the offense have all identified him as being. If all of this work is not for Shedeur Sanders, then who exactly is it for? Is Andrew Berry building a championship-caliber offensive infrastructure around a quarterback who refused to speak to the media during mandatory activities and who has shown every sign of competitive and organizational disengagement? Is Spencer Fano's elite left tackle protection being assembled for a quarterback whose statistical record in comparable situations does not justify the organizational investment being made in supporting his success? Those questions answer themselves. And the answer they produce is the same answer that everything about this offseason has been pointing toward since the first day of minicamp when Shedeur Sanders stepped into that huddle with the first team unit and delivered a dart to Isaiah Bond while wearing the helmet camera that his coaching staff placed on him to capture every decision he makes. All of this is for Shedeur Sanders. The work is for him. The infrastructure is for him. The protection is for him. The receiver room is for him. The tight end is for him. The undrafted free agents being brought into rookie minicamp this weekend are being evaluated within a system being built around his development and his success. The opinions of the people trying to tell a different story mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of what is actually being built in Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders said so himself this morning. And he said it with the kind of quiet, grounded, spiritually anchored confidence that reflects a young man who knows exactly who he is and exactly where he is going regardless of what the noise around him is trying to say. Walk in your purpose. Keep working. Let the preseason speak. The opinions mean nothing. The work means everything. And the work is still happening, every single day, in both directions simultaneously, with Shedeur Sanders preparing to be the quarterback this franchise needs him to be and Andrew Berry building the roster around him that the franchise needs to support that preparation. The grand scheme of this story has not changed. The noise has been loud. But the signal has been consistent. And the signal is Shedeur Sanders. Still working. Still walking in his purpose. Still wearing the helmet camera and taking reps and preparing to show the football world what the preseason footage will make impossible to deny. Shake the haters off. The work continues.